Your inability to focus is not your fault, but it is 100% your responsibility. And in today's video, we're going to go over the 3 neuroscience-backed strategies that I give all of my executive clients to help them have more executive function. Because while it's not your fault, your nervous system is reacting to stimulus, it is your responsibility to take in information and do something better with it. If you're new to the channel, my name is Dr. Chris, and I coach executives around the world to help them be more productive, peaceful, and present in their lives without mindset and fluffy nonsense that the internet is talking to you about. I'm talking about tactical, self-regulation, neuroscience-backed systems strategies so that you can be a better version of yourself, not in 6 months, but start today. If you're interested in the tactics that the top leaders on this planet use to drive success and be more present without being an asshole, like so many people out in those worlds end up turning into, you want to stick around because these strategies today are just for you. So phase 1 of this is really understanding that productivity is not dependent on your calendar like it's so preached out there. As long as everything is just prioritized and you have clarity around what you're doing, your system should have the capacity to execute. And that is really awesome from about the 1980s up until about 2010, but we know better, so we should start to learn to do better. Productivity and focus are not just simple mantras that we can say, follow flow, and as long as I can hit a flow state, everything is just great. We know that that is not true. And trust me, as somebody who went through school, completed a doctorate as a single dad, and also had the bandwidth to scale up this entire corporate media consulting firm, it's not about having things prioritized. And for a lot of us out there, we already are prioritized. We know clearly what it is that we want, and for the most part, how to get there. We are pretty focused on that thing. So what exactly does it come down to? Well, phase 1 of this is really understanding that it is really about neurological resources. And one of the primary systems for getting more productivity out of your day is knowing that you have the proper fuel. And no, this has nothing to do with ketones or making sure that your system is like prepped and ready. This has to do with sleep. So one of the primary neurotransmitters inside of your brain that allows you to have more focus is acetylcholine. So when we fire neurons back and forth, there is a gap between 2 neurons in which we use neurotransmitters to push messages and signals and action potentials further down to the next neuron, to the next neuron, to the next neuron. And in between though, this neuron firing to this one over here will send these chemical signatures down the line, and there's a certain amount or a certain saturation point where those neurotransmitters from here fill up over here and that signal gets sent down. The chemicals that are sent in between are neurotransmitters or neuropeptides, or depending on what they are in different functions. The one that we're going to focus on here is acetylcholine. And acetylcholine is one of the primary neurotransmitters that we associate with focus. And the more that we focus, the more that we use that neurotransmitter, the more that it not only imperfectly binds from here, but the more that in between the neurons and something called the synaptic cleft, the more that that gets filled up. Because if we send 10 acetylcholine neurotransmitters from here to here, it only takes 2 for this to get bound and to send the next action potential. So there's 8 left over in the in-between space, in that synaptic cleft. Now, the nervous system knows how expensive it is to use all of these different neurotransmitters, so we recycle and we rebute, and we use a lot of those neurotransmitters in different ways. So we have this reuptake of neurotransmitters to the original neuron that sent this out. Now, why does any of this matter for you? Well, it turns out that we have a specific threshold of how much focus and how much productivity our system can actually tolerate. And a huge portion of that is dependent upon how much acetylcholine is left between those neurons. And acetylcholine actually has something that many of us are familiar with this, which is an antagonist called caffeine. So the more acetylcholine that is stuck between those 2 neurons, the more drowsy, the more sleepy that our nervous system becomes. And you're probably thinking to yourself, well, okay, then is the goal just to not have acetylcholine? Well, no, because we have to fire acetylcholine to have productivity. The narrative that most research is showing us nowadays is that the amount of acetylcholine between those 2 neurons is something that for the most of us is fixed, and we only get a certain amount of focus hours every single day. One of my favorite researchers out of MIT, his name is Cal Newport, has an extraordinary book called Deep Focus, in which he says about every single day, most high performers have somewhere between between 2 and 4 hours of deep focus work where they can be creative and do associative learning. For me, I know that my system can do about 2.5 hours every single day, and that the further my day progresses, the more acetylcholine between my neurons is going to fill up, and the more drowsy I'm going to be, and the less that I'm going to be able to focus and prioritize information and do things like this and make a video, which is why I'm not shooting this at 6 p.m. in the afternoon, because my ability to string words together at 6 in the afternoon is not a pretty sight. For the most part, it is just not something anybody really needs to see or participate with, which is what phase 2 of this conversation is going to look like. So we need to know very clearly, number one, how do I make sure that I have the availability to fire those neurons properly every single day? And how do I want to use that 2 to 4 hours? This has to do with sleep. So we can clear out some of those metabolites from between our brain cells during the day, but it is an extraordinarily inefficient process. And this is where most people say, oh, it's about prioritization. It's not about prioritization. Prioritization is extraordinarily important. You need to know what you're doing so that you're not expending energy in a wrong direction. However, if you don't have any energy to expend, or your neurons are so clogged up full of yesterday's thoughts, feelings, and ideas, you're not going to be able to be productive or present, which is why sleep, when we turn on our glymphatic system and clear out the metabolites between our neurons, is insanely important. And this is why for all of my priority clients that I work with, we use something called an Aura Ring. Aura Ring helps us biometrically monitor how well we are sleeping and how well we are resting and recovering, because high performance for a multi-$100 million business or $1 billion business is never accidental. You don't just stumble into that. It's something that is programmed and something that we have to figure out and associate in different ways. And ensuring that we're not taking guesswork into the work or into our productivity or into our family lives, we use the Aura Ring to make sure that we're getting adequate sleep. And on the days that we haven't recovered, haven't rested well, that we are also stacking up our day to not overextend the resources that we have today, because the core of burnout is not having availability today, so we steal from tomorrow to meet today's needs. And that is a pattern that I want us to stop here. So our glymphatic system gets activated during deep sleep. And if you're wondering why it sounds like the lymphatic system, it's because it is our glymph cells or our glial cells coming out and eating up all those metabolites and recycling them. It happens primarily during our deep sleep phases. So if you're not getting good sleep and you think that the hustle and grind mentality is really the way to go about it, no, it is not, and you will fall short. So there's two things that I want you to know about getting quality deep sleep. And I've done so many podcasts on this, and I talk about it pretty much once a month on social media and here. The room needs to be dark and the room needs to be cold. The room needs to be consistent. Dark, cold, consistent. So when you have those things kind of stacked up, cold and consistent are the two biggest ones, right? Pick 2 out of the 3 to really make a difference here. Cold and consistent. The coldness is telling our brain that it is this time of day and we are going into this routine. When we wake up in the morning, we get a cortisol rush from our body, a healthy cortisol rush, and that stimulates temperature to wake our body up. When we start to reduce body temperature, it's because melatonin is signaling to our body that we need to reduce core body temperature so that certain metabolite processes like our glymphatic system can get started. Some of the things that are going to destroy your sleep that are researched back: high stimulation, things like blue screens and scrolling are not good for your deep sleep. And if you don't believe me, snag an Aura Ring and join one of our cohorts. I will prove it to you like I do every single quarter. And then after that, the number one thing is just inconsistency. So keeping those things in mind, if you really want to have deeper focus, it is not about prioritizing your calendar. It is about prioritizing your sleep. Let's go on to phase 2. Phase 2 is very much about boundaries. We always talk about work-life balance, but that's actually not true. It's work-life boundaries. Boundaries are tolerances that we have of how we want to invest the newly found energy from sleep into our everyday life. And let me use a personal example. So I am a dad. I go to the gym nearly every single day, and I also have ton of time to homeschool my daughter while running 3 separate companies. The way that I do that is through boundaries. It's through barriers. It's making sure that my brain has certainty and predictability to know what to expect, what to anticipate, and what to invest during specific times of the day. Now, for most people, this is not there and available for them, but if you want to become a high performer and get a week's worth done in a day, this This is exactly what most performers do because they've uncovered what the brain actually needs, which is certainty, which is predictability, because nothing stresses the brain out more than uncertainty. And I started to figure this out when I was getting burnt out in school. Why can't I focus? Why can't I learn? And it's because my system just didn't have the tolerance for that. My system was constantly under the scrutiny of making sure that I was passing my board exams and constantly being judged and criticized for performing as a doctor would in the role that I was training for. And on top of that, I had the uncertainty of having my newly born daughter with me, which is just the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. But she's an uncertainty bomb, as most people that have young kids know. So predictability, certainty, expectation are critically important to not having priority in your schedule, but giving your nervous system an insight into what is going to happen into the future. Now, this is where we take what we learned in section number 1, and we're going to put it into section number 2 here, which is creating the opportunity for first things first. So most people that are unproductive, that are busy instead of productive, major in minor things, which means that they are focused kind of on email over here and kind of on like writing up some creative ideas over here and kind of doing some of this and, oh, let me get some of these things down. What really successful people do, and what most of them have uncovered, is that their ability to be productive is simply a management resource tool. And the management resource tool is making sure that the most important things are done at the start of the day, because as the day goes by, their availability to be present, productive, and creative goes down significantly, as does their team members, as does everyone's. And no one is an exception to this rule. I have yet to find somebody who is truly, through time, an exception to the rule, which just means that, oh, I'm a productive person at night, maybe for a season, maybe for a day, heck, maybe even for a month, maybe even for 6 months during school. But for the longevity of sustainability, creativity, purpose, passion, power, they don't last. And this is why during the morning time, I highly recommend creating triggers. State determines story, determines strategy. So the state that we want to create is familiarity. So when I come into this room, this is my desk. I have my camera and there's certain smells in here. The carpet has a certain feeling to it. And my desk always has about 3 things on it. It has 1 fidget tool, 1 pen, and 1 journal. And yes, this is a gold and pink Hello Kitty journal that my daughter got me. If you want to battle it out, I will take you to the streets, because this is my favorite journal because my daughter gave it to me. And it's kind of awesome. I mean, it's like gold, pink's kind of fantastic. Conversation for another day. Besides that, I got a keyboard, I got my monitor, and that's it. Undistracted. Doors close, and if I need to, I can put headphones on, but for the most part, I sit down. That is an environmental trigger, which is creating a state. Now, the state is going to create a story. The story is the mindset that ends up getting triggered. Mindset is not something we create. It's something that we get triggered into. It's a predictable state. So when my system comes in here, it knows, oh, the story of being in this room means that we are going to create content, work with clients, read books, be educational. We're going to use our focus during that period of time. So my system goes, oh, I know what to expect here. It's like jumping into the pool and not holding your breath. Your body knows to hold its breath because it knows what happens when it goes into water. You want to create environment, system, strategies, and boundaries in your life to make sure that your system has proper anticipation for what you want it to do, which is extremely important because story determines strategy. Strategy is all productivity. It's how your system's going to show up through time and space. It's what it's going to use. And this strategy is where you develop the most important thing to be successful, which is skill. If you don't have state, something that you can trigger, determining the story, determining the strategy, you'll never build skill. And that is the number one thing that makes people more productive. So the biggest thing here, work-life balance, is all about work-life boundaries. Boundaries can be both environmental, being in rooms, but also using something like a Pomodoro timer, which is wrapping your focus in 20-minute intervals, taking a 5-minute break, 20-minute interval of work, 5-minute break, 20-minute interval of work, 5-minute break. It is how I tell all my executives and train all my executives to make sure that they are head down focused. And in case you're wondering, this isn't just about executives and business owners and people burning out and driving to success. This is also about your availability to be present with your family. This is all about making sure that you have resources at the end of the day to spend and invest in ways that are important to you. The last one is the hardest one, and is simply about energy investment. Me and my daughter were on a run the other day, and I'm out on this run, and I only run about once or twice a week, and she's like pacing me on her little yellow bike. And she's like, "Dad, do you need a break?" And I'm like, no, I don't need a break right now because I want to have more energy tomorrow. And she goes, well, but what do you mean? Like, if you take a break, you're going to keep your energy today. And I told her that the energy that you invest today determines how much energy you're going to have tomorrow. So I'm investing energy today, which means giving away some of it because it's going to grow as I sleep and I recover. So I'll have more energy tomorrow. And it clicked in for her and she finally really got it. And this is where I want to say, where are you investing your attention? Where are you investing your focus? Most people are investing their time, energy, and focus into things that really aren't productive. And the biggest one is right here. It's their phone. People get sucked into their phones and into worlds that don't even matter. And what I do in most seminars and most workshops that I work with people is I say, great, open up your phone, show me your screen time. What's going on? What does that look like? And this is where people get real nervous and jerky because their screen time shows that on average, people are on their phones somewhere between 3 to 5 hours a day, strictly on social media. These things used to be like a huge struggle bus to have the right amount of battery. Now it's just the amount of battery that it is turning us into. We get exhausted because the scroll features on social media were developed with people like me that maybe didn't have the ethics. It's all about addiction. It's all about anticipation. It's all about short dopamine reward systems. And what that does is it exhausts our system. Now, while it does feel relieving to have some scrolling in your life and be able to just like, oh my gosh, take a breath for a minute, what it's really doing is suppressing and depressing what's really going on inside of your system. Not only that, but the amount of subjects that you cover in 1 minute time can go upwards of 10 different subjects, forcing your brain to shift constantly and transition constantly between art and business and cat falling downstairs and oh my gosh, that person's half naked and this and that and that and this, and it's just chaotic. And what that does is it narrows our attention span, and attention leads to focus, and that focus is what drives productivity. Most people in this modern world are starting to realize that the real currency, the real freedom, the real luxury is being able to focus and prioritize that which you desire and deem is important. And most people, if you look at their calendar, if you look at their schedule, if you look at their energy allocation, what they invest time into, they're invested into dissociation. They're invested into distraction. And if you really look at that in the longevity of life, they're invested into not exactly living. They're invested into remaining distracted, which is not really a way to live. So what I would recommend is just taking an energetic inventory. Where are you investing your time? And if you did it for the next 10 years, would you be proud of the person that it is shaping you into? Yes, that is critical. Yes, that is sharp. And in this energy allocation ecosystem and economy, it is the thing that is going to make or break you. It is the thing right now that most relationship researchers are showing is making or breaking relationships, as most people don't even have the bandwidth to have confrontation in their relationships, which is the place where depth and intimacy really form. And this is why so many relationships are end up falling flat. And this is where we get burnt out because we're back to majoring in minor things. So take some time today and just look at where some of those areas of your life are that maybe need some refinement. And if you need help recycling, check out our other video on dopamine detox. So the most important thing that we can do here is, number one, let's get good quality sleep. Let's establish healthy work-life boundaries. And that third thing, let's just make sure that where we're investing is actually what we want to be investing and growing our lives into. If that means getting rid of social media because it's not a part of your work and your life, okay. If that means downloading app blockers, delightful. But when you start to implement these 3 strategies, you will see immediate differences in your everyday life. And you're going to recognize that these changes are starting to shift and change how you experience everyday productivity. Small disclaimer, the first couple weeks, the first couple days that you experience this, it is going to be uncomfortable. There is no magic wand to any of these things because we're changing neural pathways that are going to be uncomfortable. So if you want to stick around and check out our next video about how to be comfortable in the discomfort, it'll probably do you a huge benefit. If you guys like videos like this and you want more and you want exclusive interviews to some of the world's top performers in health, wellness, entrepreneur, business, and how to be a better version of yourself today, stick around and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys on the next one.